The Yakuza franchise is a weird one to say the least. One half Japanese crime drama filled with compelling, memorable characters, and one half absolute madness of slapstick and comically absurd capers. It shouldn't work, but it really does. Despite its first entry releasing back in 2005 on the PlayStation 2, the long-running franchise has experienced a sudden burst in popularity with Western audiences since the release of Yakuza Zero in 2017. We've just entered the year 2021, but let's go back to 1988 as we examine the absolute madness of Yakuza Zero. Yakuza Zero is a prequel in the long-running Japanese crime series. Before Zero's release, we already had 5 mainline games. But don't be afraid about that. As a prequel, Zero does a great job of serving as an entry point for newcomers to the franchise like myself. Yakuza Zero is set in 1988 and features 2 stories. The first features a young baby-faced Kazumiki long before he became known as the legendary Dragon of Dojima. Kiryu is just a lowly debt collector suddenly framed for murder and forced to work with a shady real estate company to clear his name. Meanwhile, over in Sotenbori, Goro Majima, exiled from the Yakuza for defying orders, is given an opportunity to get back into the Yakuza. But the job proves to be the most difficult task he'll ever face. Prequels are always a tricky thing, especially when you've already got 5 entries that come after. Yakuza Zero quite comfortably handles it all though. We see younger versions of Kiryu and Majima, and a few other recurring faces. And we see key events that explain how Kiryu and Majima grow to become the characters we love in future entries. There's plenty of fan service sprinkled in too, such as encountering a younger version of Daigo Dojima, a character that would play a major role in future entries. Despite being a prequel, Zero isn't afraid to shake up the formula. One of the biggest new features was how Kiryu and Majima employ 3 distinct fighting styles in combat. There's a standard, more balanced style, a style that focuses on rapid hits to break down guarding enemies, and one style that is just nothing but raw power. It's perhaps the thing that makes Yakuza truly unique. The ability to balance intense, gripping storytelling with moments of complete madness is such a tricky thing. Bouncing between 2 completely different tones is something that shouldn't work, and yet Yakuza does it with total ease. One second you're desperately fighting everyone attacking from all directions, the next moment you're dancing like a fool in public to try and distract people from a human statue that desperately needs to go to the toilet. It's probably the reason Yakuza can keep its players on the hook for so long. If you commit to one tone for too long, then eventually the player gets used to it, so by constantly changing the tone it can make the bigger moments hit even harder. And as the story starts to ramp things up and the stakes get higher, it can be refreshing to take a break, hit the club and bust out some sick moves. If we want to talk about distractions, then there's so many of them when it comes to Yakuza. You've got dancing, you've got arcades with claw machines and classic Sega games, crazy sub-stories, and some good old-fashioned Yakuza-themed karaoke. Hell, there's even entire storylines for business minigames for both Kiryu and Majima. Kiryu's partnership with Tachibana Real Estate leads him into an actual real estate management game, while Majima finds himself managing a cabaret club in a more quick-paced minigame. Both have fully developed storylines with easily punchable rivals, and perhaps a cool little secret if you see it out to the end. Kiryu's real estate royale sees him purchasing properties around Kamurocho to free it from the control of the 5 billionaires. To maximise profits, Kiryu assigns managers and bodyguards for collections, and the staff are mostly encountered through side adventures such as Miracle Jackson, Steven Spining, or a chicken called Nugget. As your ownership over an area increases, the kings will respond with challenges and inevitably use force to try and put an end to your properties. Meanwhile, Majima finds himself managing a cabaret club called Club Sunshine. In a 3-minute period, you'll assign hostesses to incoming customers and support them by identifying hand signals. Once you make enough money, you'll then have to compete directly against rival club owners, with the winner being the person who has the biggest overall profits at the end of a shift. Ultimately, both minigames are just fantastic time wasters. Kiryu's is a little more passive since you have to start a collection and wait until it's done, while Majima's is more of a kind of rapid fire minigame. Over the past few years, I've found myself becoming so uninterested in most open world games. I feel like they all just follow this same blueprint. You have a massive open world, where most of it's just empty fields with nothing in them. You have repetitive side quests with no effort or thought put into them, tacked on, barely developed RPG systems, and a main story that you could probably get through in 8 to 10 hours. But Yakuza so easily defies everything you'd expect from open world games. Both cities are filled with alleys and other details that are worth looking for, and sub-stories that will have you laughing your head off, or sometimes pulling on your heartstrings. And Yakuza features progression mechanics that are actually worth investing in. As you make money, you invest in the characters, improve their abilities, enhance their stats, and find other useful tricks to expand your dominance in combat. The point is that I think Yakuza ignores everything that has bored me about open world game design nowadays. And it does this by presenting an actual living world that feels worth exploring and paying attention to, which is something I just don't think most open world games do nowadays. So let's get back to the main story. Kiryu and Majima's adventures are 2 unpredictable, gritty crime stories fueled by deception, violence, and the pursuit of power. What really drives these stories are the fantastic characters though. Kiryu is a young, fresh-faced Yakuza who's trying to avoid bringing shame upon his father figure, while Majima, at his core, is a guy trapped in a cage. After defying orders, he was dumped in Sotenbori and kept under constant supervision at all times. So when his loyalty to the Yakuza clashes with his sense of morals, it creates an incredibly compelling character stuck playing an unwinnable game. Kiryu, on the other hand, is learning about Yakuza life the hard way. His work with Tachibana real estate brings him into conflict with his old Yakuza bosses who all pursue power through different means. Kiryu finds himself in the crosshairs of all of them and finds his loyalty to the Yakuza tested against his loyalty to his father figure, Shintaro Kazama. And if there's one thing Yakuza consistently gets right, it's how the game uses dynamic intros to give certain fights a big fight feel. Combined with the way that characters have their full name and job position appear as the fight starts, you know when shit's about to go down.
引く気はないか。なら、ゴッドハンドの大サービスや。行くでー。
And while Zero is filled with fantastic and memorable characters, for me the true standout is Daisaku Kuze from Kiryu's story. He's the old-fashioned type that believes true power comes through physical dominance. So when this young nobody debt collector knocks him on his ass, Kuze's pride just can't handle it. This old man's persistent desire for revenge makes him such a fun character, especially when it comes to smashing his face in time and time again. Another recurring enemy throughout Yakuza Zero is the incredibly persistent range of enemies known as Mr. Shakedown. A big, hulking, high-risk enemy. They're not just a meaningless encounter though. When you spot them out in the world, you'll also see how much money they're carrying on them. If you challenge and defeat one, you'll get all of that money. However, they're not called Mr. Shakedown for nothing. Lose the fight, and he'll take every yen you have. The high risk, high reward nature of these fights is pretty scary at first. However, in the later chapters, as the cost of character upgrades gets more expensive, fights with Mr. Shakedown start to become more enticing. Doesn't get easier though. With every victory, he'll come back tougher than before. And by that I mean he has a bigger health bar. So if I were to give a final verdict on this game, it's that Yakuza 0 rules. It's an absolute delight of a game, and honestly it's usually on sale, or if you're on PC or Xbox it's in Game Pass, so it's pretty easy to get hold of. It's a game that's gripping and surprising, but at other times it's gut-bustingly funny. It's a game overflowing with plenty of worthwhile content and a central story that can keep you hooked until the very end. It's got mini-games of all kinds, from retro arcade classics to just busting out some moves on a dance floor. There's a lot to love about Yakuza 0, whether you've been here before or you're a total newcomer to the franchise like I was. It's just a damn good time. So thanks for watching, that's my video about the absolutely fantastic Yakuza 0. In case you couldn't tell, I just cannot recommend this game enough. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.
Utau 姿がセクシーだぜ。